right, I think we're getting started. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome. My name is 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀, and I'm joined by my colleague, John Miller, and we're going to talk to you today about building your own custom copilots in Teams. So to get us started, I thought I'd frame things and back up a step, and maybe talk about the complementary platform pillars for building copilots at Microsoft. So if you've attended sessions yesterday and today, you've probably seen some slides that look a lot like this. We have offerings that you've probably heard about, from low code with Copilot Studio all the way up to a pro code toolset with Visual Studio Code and the Teams Toolkit. And the types of options you have for extending Copilot and building your own Copilot, they range from Copilot extensions like connectors and plugins. If you've been in other sessions, you've probably heard these. I think about these options as really bringing your app to Microsoft's AI. So bringing your data, your UX, your components on top of our Copilot product. Connectors and plugins, like I said, fit this category well. But of course, you have the option of building your own Copilot, which is the right-hand side of this slide. And I think of this side as, if the left side is bringing your app to our AI, the right side is bringing AI into your app. And this is what we're going to focus on today with, again, full code tools. So we'll be using Visual Studio Code and the Teams Toolkit for our conversation. And we thought to kick us off, let's just jump right in. And so we're going to take a look at a Copilot that John built for this discussion.
All right, thanks. My name is John. So this is a Copilot that I built. It's for Northwind Traders. Northwind Traders is a trading company that will provide groceries to stores. And so what I wanted to build is an intelligent assistant that can search over the product data, answer questions for the Northwind policies, and ultimately create orders and do something. So I thought I would show you how this works so you can get an idea of what we'll be laying out for the rest of the talk. Right away, we have these prompt starters. So it's a good way for your users to know how to use the Copilot. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to just try to show you it running live. So I can go ahead and send one of those prompt starters to my language model. So what's going to happen is I just sent this text. It's going to go to my language model, which doesn't know anything about 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, which is a product that Northwind Traders has. But I have some context that I've given it about some code that it can call to get that information from my database. So what's happened is, if I scroll up a little bit, you'll see it returned an adaptive card. So what happened is it called out to my code. My code got the information about 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, created this adaptive card, and then sent it back as chat. So rather than the LLM kind of create a summary of text, in this case, I wanted to send something deterministic like an adaptive card, so I've done that. But we can do some more. So if I ask, like, what is the Northwind order policy? Oh, there we go. Yes, it is live. I will make mistakes. So I will send that. And what this is going to show is that, again, Northwind order policies are documents that I have, in this case, in Azure AI Search. So we have a vector database. It's an index with all the documents and things about Northwind. And because I've set this up with Azure OpenAI, I've connected that Azure AI Search. And it's able to do RAG over that data. And then I should get a response here that has some context about the Northwind order policy from those documents. So here's a response that tells me some things about the Northwind order policy. And then you can see you can hover over these inline citations and see where that information came from. So here's the documents that are in my index. And you can look at them inside the references. If I'm happy with that, there's also a feedback I can send directly to the developers. So I can type in, hit these plus or thumbs up and thumbs down icons and send some feedback to the developers. So what we're going to do is Joey's going to walk you through how the tech stack is for this and how we built it. And then we'll jump back and forth and show you different pieces of code on how I implemented this.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note what we just saw is live in Teams. You're looking at a one-on-one chat in that demo, but all this stuff is equally applicable in group scopes, like our group chats, our meetings, our channels, things of that nature. So like John said, in this session, we're going to give you the clear end-to-end picture for building and deploying a Copilot just like that one into Teams. So we'll start by defining what custom Copilots are by their components, and then we're going to walk you through every layer of that tech stack, from foundational models all the way up to some of the latest UX innovations that John just showed running in Teams. And along the way, John's going to show you the live code demos that built up to that Northwind Trader Copilot running on Teams. So let's start by breaking down what a custom Copilot is. And at its base, a Copilot uses a model and an orchestrator. So the orchestrator sits on top of a foundational model. This is really the AI brain of your Copilot. Coming up, we're going to show you a few tools for developing on these models and adding data to suit your needs, like using Azure OpenAI Studio, for instance. But it's important to note that with our AI library and our offerings, you can use any large language model in your custom Copilot. You truly have access to this entire tech stack all the way down. But models and data alone are just one level of it. To start to build a conversational interface, you'll need to add prompt instructions, actions with your actual business logic that can return charts and cards like you just saw, event handlers, triggers, and intent detection. John was talking to that Copilot in natural language. How did it detect intent and map it to those actions? So late last year, we launched a new set of tools that modernize Teams bots effectively, and we called this the Teams AI Library. So this was built on top of Microsoft's bot framework, and this, late last year, was the foundational groundwork for a true custom Copilot. Today, very exciting to announce that that AI library is generally available with .NET and JavaScript, and now Python. Crowd goes wild. Finally, your models, your data, and your conversational interface, they all have to run somewhere, and we're going to focus a lot on Teams today. So how we get these things running in Microsoft 365 through the Teams client. The good news is we've totally modernized our chatbots, like I said, to look and feel just like modern Copilots in Teams. So this means new features like streaming responses, citations inline, feedback loops like John showed, AI labels, and more. We're going to demo all of that for you throughout this talk. So if we're ready to get started, let's talk about new innovations in our tools for developing on a large language model. And I'm going to start by first just re-emphasizing custom Copilots, again, are agnostic to the model that you pick. You can develop against any model, say in OpenAI or in Azure OpenAI, and easily connect it to our conversational interfaces in your Copilot. The AI library is releasing new modules and samples to make this even easier all the time. You'll see a sample, for instance, for 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗻𝗄 models in our library today. But if you are starting in Azure, we have fantastic news. Coming very soon, Azure OpenAI Studio will offer a simple deployment option into Teams. So you can develop your model here, you can connect your data here, and you can deploy to Teams through the Teams Toolkit in VS Code in seconds. So this really starts to connect the dots between foundational models and the conversational interface part of that tech stack that I was telling you about. And Teams Toolkit supports the AI library out of the box, so it makes this flow super easy. Again, this experience is coming very soon. But again, you don't have to start in Azure's OpenAI Studio. If you choose, you can bring your own model to the party, and the Teams Toolkit has you covered step by step. So when you launch the toolkit, as John's about to show, you can now find clear options for building a custom Copilot right from the toolkit, pointing your Copilot to the right data source, whether that be something totally custom, an API, Azure AI Search, which you're about to see, or M365 data sources like Graph and SharePoint. All this is available right out of the toolkit today. So let's take a look.
All right, so we're back in VS Code. I've already installed Teams Toolkit, which is an extension you can get in the marketplace. To get started, you can go over to the toolkit icon on the left here, and you can create a new app. And you're started to present with a wizard-like experience where you can kind of pick how you want to get started. So we have some ways to start with Teams capabilities or add-ins. In this case, we're going to do custom Copilot, and then you can kind of start drilling down into how you want to get started. Most similarly to what I demoed is the chat with your data section, and you can choose where's that data coming from. So you have customize, which gives you kind of some classes that you can implement your API calls yourself, or Azure AI Search is similar to what I did. Our custom API scaffolds out a project to use an OpenAI API description document, and then M365 if you want to do Graph. So I'll just pick one of these, and like Joey said, we have support for those 3 languages. So I'll choose TypeScript. You can connect through this wizard with Azure OpenAI or OpenAI. So I'm just going to skip that now. I just want to show you what this creates, and I probably need to create something. I already have 1, 2, 3. So
1, 2, 3, 5.
1, 2, 3, 5. I have a lot of test projects. All right, so what you end up with is a project that's scaffolded to work out of the box with Teams Toolkit. Teams Toolkit is our developer tools to help you run and build these apps directly in Teams and across M365. And that's the README file that pops up. You can read that if you create your own project. So there's some files in here to help with automation, to help create the resources you need for a Teams app, like a Teams app ID and bot registrations, that kind of thing. That's all automated in these YAML files, which is basically our opinion on task runners. So you can have all that to automate that. And again, all these things are optional. The templates start with them, but you can start to remove what you don't need or customize what you need. And then what Joey mentioned is for these apps, you need to connect your model. So what I did for the Northwind Traders Copilot is used Azure OpenAI Studio. So here we are inside of that. To get started, you can just go to the deployments. Here's the deployment I created. It's an instance of GPT-4. And the deployment name is something that I made, and then you reference that in your project. When you're ready to connect it, you can go to the chat tab. This whole studio gives you a way to test out your model. So you might have saw this in the keynote today, very similar to the Azure AI Studio. It's just this one's specific to OpenAI. So you can go in here, and let me get past these dual scroll bars, and go right here to view code. You can click on that. And here's the two things you need. You need an endpoint and API key. So you can copy those and put those in your project, and then you're getting started to connect to the Teams AI library, which I'll go into that in a minute, but first I want Joey to explain exactly what the Teams AI library is and all the constructs that we use to build this.
Great. Yeah, so like John mentioned, so far you just saw Microsoft's set of tools to begin to develop on a foundational AI model. That's that AI brain of your Copilot, as well as grounding that model in your data. So now let's focus on the next middle layer of the tech stack that I talked about at the top of the talk, which is the Teams AI library. If anyone is out there and already familiar with the AI library, you might have heard the next couple of minutes of this talk. Be patient with me. For those new to the scene, before we dig a little bit deeper, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here to kind of ground this conversation and where we're at now. In Teams, we had chatbot support right from the start. But building bots that felt natural and intuitive to interact with was always a challenge. Most bots relied on, for instance, a set of declared commands, which felt primitive and restrictive to use. And users had to understand these commands to interact with your apps. So they needed to know your app's language and not the other way around. And this is just because NLP, up until the halcyon days of 2021 and earlier, NLP was actually, it's hard to believe, incredibly complex and expensive to build. So this is an example of what a typical kind of bot interaction pattern in Teams used to look like in a group scope, as you see here. So users had to understand, again, the bot's language, choose a command from this list and proceed from there. None of this is particularly intuitive. It isn't their own natural language. It's definitely not a custom Copilot. But the Teams AI library was built from the ground up to address these challenges. And again, introduce and lay the framework for how to build Copilots in M365. So with the AI library, your Copilots can leverage language models to facilitate more natural conversational interactions with users. Basically, the idea is to guide their conversation into your business logic and your app skills. So this means you can focus on writing your business logic and allow teams to handle the complexities of conversational bot development on its own, so that you as developers can just extract and utilize the user's intentions in your apps. You're going to see lots of examples of what I mean by this. Overall, it just means the AI library empowers you to make more intelligent and personalized experiences for your users. So they start to look more like this. With the AI library, you see a user here talking naturally to a Copilot inside a group chat with their peers. You see that it extracts user intention. In this case, it's an update to the open items for Project Ruby. And then they return the right result in a rich adaptive card. It's kind of something John showed earlier. The biggest point to land here, if I can land any note during this talk, is that we expect these Copilots to be part of the conversation. Users are going to expect every conversation to be with other people, other Copilots, and a mix of Copilots and people working together. And introducing your experiences where they're already working is vital to making sure your app is relevant in that world. The user can continue the conversation from there, asking follow-ups like finding the right subject matter expert on one of the items, and then even perform an action like assigning that work item to the right contact. So now we're going to get into the gory details here. We're going to explore how the AI library processes user commands and then delivers intelligent responses. So again, this is a team-centric interface to large language models. So you use techniques here that you're about to learn about, like things like prompt engineering, where you can add Copilot-like conversational experiences. The AI library includes built-in safety features like moderation, which help ensure your Copilot always responds in the appropriate manner. The library includes a planning engine that lets the model identify user intent, maps it to actions that you implement. And as we showed earlier, we provide built-in support for both OpenAI and Azure OpenAI models, but you can easily add support for any model you choose. In fact, if you heard about OpenAI's GPT-4o model the other day, this is a one-liner change with the AI library, and your Copilot is just immediately cheaper and faster. So I wanted to just cover quickly the 4 critical steps to start using the AI library. There really genuinely are 4. First, the first 2 steps are really an exercise in scaffolding that the Teams Toolkit largely takes care of for you. So you'll start by scaffolding out your necessary AI components for your Copilot. So this means importing the library into your project, configuring a few component settings. Next, you'll make an application object. This basically represents your Copilot in Teams. So Teams understands what this object is and can use it. And the object will be able to use to handle incoming messages, process user input, and handle AI-triggered actions. Then you'll create a prompt for your Copilot. So prompts are just basically define the AI's personality, probably something you've heard plenty of over the course of this build, but it's really just the behavior, personality, and the guidance to steer the conversation the user is having into your actions. Actions are the 4th step here. This is largely the bulk of your work. This is your business logic. So when a intention is recognized by step number 3, the model using your prompt to gather user attention, it'll fire an action, and John is going to show that in just a second. To dive in just a little bit deeper, you first have to create the AI components, like I mentioned, that you want to use. There's really 3 types. First, you need to pick a model. As you can see, our library offers samples of OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, out of the box, but any LLM will do. Second, you'll create a prompt manager. This manages the creation of your prompts, and the default prompt manager supports powerful features like templating and prompt chaining. And third, you'll create a planner. The planner is how you interface with the model of your choice. We'll talk more about the role of the planner shortly. One thing that's actually not on this bullet list, but I want to mention, is that it's also extremely important to consider implementing a moderator, which is something the AI library also offers. And this is just a way to validate both the inputs and outputs from your custom Copilot to make sure it's passing, any requirements that you have. 2, this is you scaffolding out an application object. So you'll configure this with a storage provider, the AI components that you just created in step 1. This has built-in state management, which it uses to automatically track the history of the conversation it's having with users. So you'll be able to store your own state as well. And if you're familiar at all with the bot framework state management system, all of the standard conversation, user, and temporary memory scopes are just supported here. This is all built on top of the bot framework. And once you've created your application object, you define your server's messaging route, and you just pass all the incoming requests into that object for processing. Now prompts. So the default prompt manager organizes prompts into folders. So once you have your prompt the way you like it, let's say you're developing one in Azure OpenAI Studio or Azure AI Studio against the model of your choice, you make a folder for it here. You copy the text to your prompt from that playground that you were developing into a file. And the prompt manager supports template variables and even calling functions. So say if you wanted to add something like today's date directly in the prompt, you'd be able to add those template parameters as well. Finally, you basically create a file called config.json. And this contains all the settings that you need and that you used in your model's playground, like temperature and max tokens, things of that nature. This file also selects the model, that you want to use, which means you're free to use a mix of models in your Copilot. It's a little bit advanced for this session, but it's something to note. And I'll pause here to say, if this sounds like a lot, it's really not. The vast majority of the code that's set up here, the Teams Toolkit and its templates and samples handle for you. You're just filling in the blanks. Next, let's quickly talk about planning. So planning lets the model return a plan object that tells the model to do actions, say things, or a combination of 2. Doing an action is your business logic. Saying something is saying something to the user. And getting the model to return a plan is actually pretty easy. You just show it the schema the AI library expects for a plan and give it a list of actions, functions that your Copilot supports. And our built-in planners have logic that makes sure the model always complies with this schema. So, I know I'm going into super detail here, but so far you've scaffolded out your Copilot, you defined your AI parameters, and you wrote a schema for a planner. This is where your business logic comes in, actions. So you'll implement actions you described in your planner. The model does the intent detection when it detects an action, calls your business logic here. And I have a quick digression I wrote in my notes because I found it very cool as I was doing this, and I'm keeping it in. These are sophisticated foundational models, which means they can sometimes predict actions that they think you should have, but you haven't even implemented yet. So we have a nifty feature called an unknown action handler that picks these up. So you can learn what your users are trying to do. You can record that and then go off and build it later, even if you've never written that function or functionality. So it's real-time intent telemetry. And we've heard of partners that want to use this to basically log all the things their users are intending to do with their Copilot and then funnel that into product plans for investing in later. That's just wild stuff, and I wanted to include it. A little bit of a depth of aside. But that is the long, gory details of 4 pretty straightforward steps for an end-to-end custom Copilot on a foundational model. And John will show you how he took advantage of all that.
It's not as bad as it may sound, as Joey said, and I'll show you. So we left off in the studio, where I said you could copy these 2 things. So let me go back over to, this is the Copilot project that I was running earlier. It's still running, I'm debugging at the moment. But I'm just going to walk you through the setup of those components to show you what it looks like. And this is all scaffolded with Teams Toolkit originally. So on the left-hand side, you can see the project might look familiar. It's very similar to what was scaffolded, but just I've been customizing it. So I'll hide that for now. So it starts in the app file. That's what's scaffolded by default. We have the OpenAI model, because I'm using that. And here's where I can add those parameters. So I have my API key, my deployment name, and my endpoint. Those are the things from the studio. And I just have them in environment variables for now. So the only thing I've really customized here is the response format. So this is a parameter for Azure OpenAI where I can try to encourage the model to respond in JSON. That I found works really well because the planner, as Joey said, wants JSON in order to handle like the do and say. So again, the prompt manager's default's just reading a prompt file. That is this. You can see what my prompt is. It's nothing fancy. It just says that you're an AI assistant, helps some people find information, and I've really tried hard to encourage it to respond in JSON, as you can see. And it's not because I'm a nice guy. That is because the documentation for Azure OpenAI encourages you. If you want JSON, say it in the prompt. So I've said it here, as you can see. Please be an expert. And then I've given an example of the schema, in this case for the do and say, which is from the library. So go back to my app class. Now we have this other piece that Joey talked about. We're already like on step 4 with the action planner.
I told you it was easier than I was.
Yeah, it's all scaffolded for me. I've just gone in and started customizing stuff. So what I'm doing here is just setting up my data source for the RAG. So this is, if you go back to Teams, when I asked this question, what is a Northwind order policy? I had talked about how the model doesn't know anything about that, and I implemented RAG using Azure AI Search. Well, I didn't really have to write too much code for that because OpenAI service already supports that. All they do is connect my index. So that's what I'm doing here. You can see I have my key for that here, my search endpoint here, and my index is in the config.json that Joey talked about, which is up here. You can see here's my index name, documents. So this config file is what the library uses to send to the model with all my parameters. So I've configured my model based on some testing. So I have some different parameters here. Basically tuned everything down to 0 because I wanted it to be very accurate. I didn't want it to be too creative. So let me go back to app. One thing I learned with the OpenAI service, like Joey said, you need to give it a list of your actions and the schema of that. So here I'm specifying the role information. That's the parameter on the Azure OpenAI service. I'm sending it my prompt file. I'm doing some gross things here. Just ignore that, but you get the idea. Sending the prompt and my actions. So the actions are this JSON file. You can see what they are. This is the stuff that I want the model to know about. So when I ask back here in Teams, I said, find product status of chai. Like I said, the model doesn't know anything about chai related to Northwind. It probably would just find something generic on the web about what chai is. But instead, it matched that intent to my get product method because I gave it this information. It returns the product's details for a given product name, and then I have the schema, the parameters, and things that it needs. Here's the application object. That's mostly defaults. The only thing I did was enable the feedback loop. And here's where you tell the planner about the actions I have. So this is where I can map like the names of those actions to whatever code I want to run. The last one here is the get product. And then I just did some more product manager-y type code for getting from my local database the product information. And then this is where I constructed an adaptive card. So this is, again,
This is the business logic.
yeah, this is the business logic. So when I said find product status of chai, and in this case, I didn't want the model to take that information from my database. Like I could have just returned a string with product name, inventory status, whatever that's stock and supplier name, that kind of stuff, and let it generate some text. I didn't really want that experience for this. I wanted to display a card because I like the way this looks and it has information. I can do more with the card. I can add a nice UX here, which is one of the benefits is I have kind of full control over what I want to do. So that's what I did. And I'm just sending it, using the library to send an activity. I just send my own adaptive card here. And then I just tell the planner, hey, don't do anything else, just stop. You can see if it doesn't have that, then I return some string, so hopefully it'll generate some text that is more helpful. And I think that's all I set up for a Copilot.
Cool. So that is that kind of, again, middle stack there. Now the crowd does go wild.
There you go.
And I think the important thing to note is everything we're showing you isn't stuff that's coming soon or in progress. We actually, again, launched this and GA'd this library late last year. And many partners have already built and deployed their own Copilots. And this is available. These are in our production ecosystem today. And a bit later, we're going to look at a few excellent examples and implementations of the best custom Copilots out there. But first, let's talk about UI. So this is the top layer of the tech stack. We're 2/3 of the way there. Let's talk about UX. You've seen how you can develop on a large language model. You just saw how you can connect that to Teams conversational interfaces with the AI library. And now we can look at the pieces that make your Copilot feel like magic for the people using them. And this is our new Copilot UX in Teams. So we're launching a ton of new UX improvements for custom Copilots in Teams. And we're calling this package of things the Powered by AI kit. All of it is available now in preview. Exception of streaming. Streaming is actually in a private preview at the moment. The rest are publicly available. And this set of UX features makes your custom Copilot look and feel like a Microsoft Copilot. So as I mentioned, Teams will soon support streaming messages from your Copilot inline in a Teams chat. Again, publicly available soon. The point of streaming is it just reduces perceived latencies in your Copilot. So instead of waiting for the entire response to form and then sending that in one big chunk, users see your Copilot message token by token. It gives an immediacy to your responses. And it's because this is a custom Copilot, you could choose exactly what gets streamed and how. So you can restream each token that the model returns as it returns it, or you can chunk tokens together to give you a chance to moderate larger blocks of text before you let users see it. In addition, you're also seeing right there our new loading experience. So this is called progressive loading. It'll be available as part of this protocol. And you can think about that as akin to the system messages that Microsoft Copilot sends before their first token arrives. Next, citations. So these are inline citations. John showed them earlier. They basically source the underlying data of your response. And this really just increases user trust that your response is accurate. And it provides transparency as to where all of this information actually came from. Next, we have new labels that signal that a response was generated by AI, so your users can expect what they expect with AI. And also a feedback loop. John mentioned this a couple of times. This allows you to gather feedback on a per response basis for your Copilot's results. So the feedback loop is basically the industry standard thumbs up, thumbs down pattern, which is an event you'll receive as a bot developer, along with the option for users to submit feedback in their words directly to you for any given response that your Copilot gives. Next, we're launching prompt starters. So these, like John mentioned, they get people started with your Copilot. It's your chance to present the kinds of skills and actions that your Copilot is capable of. In addition to these 0 responses that you see here, and these show up in new conversations in Teams, we also offer inline suggested prompts during the flow of conversation, based on conversational history, context, user profile, organizational information, things of that nature. All of this, again, is to get people to know what to expect when they're interacting with your Copilot, so they're not just starting from nothing. And finally, we're constantly evolving our adaptive card UX. So these are the rich, actionable, shareable UI components that upgrade your responses from pure text to something interactive, like the live chart that John showed with the Northwind Traders bot. Today, new starter kit for all of these innovations is available now. I'll pause for a moment. If you're interested, you can find the link here. There'll be links at the end of the presentation as well. So that is kind of the broad array of new UX features. And John will show you what that looks like in our app.
Yeah, these are even easier to add. I did highlight this earlier, but I'll just circle back. In the application object, you can enable the thumbs up and thumbs down just by setting the enable feedback loop. So that'll give you the thumbs up and thumbs down from any of the messages that come from the library. And I'll scroll down to the bottom while we're talking about that. Handling that is, you can see I didn't do anything fancy here, but you just use the feedback loop method on the app object, and then you can do whatever you want with that. In this case, I'm just logging into the console. The other thing Joey showed was, it's probably easier if I just show you here. On this message, I added a sensitivity label, or in this case, a confidential statement. This is a new thing that you can add on your activity messages as well. And I did that here, so you just specify that in the entities object, and here is where I added that. So you can customize that to be whatever you want. Just kind of hard-coded it here. Because this is an activity that I took the data from my database and crafted an adaptive card, I didn't really want this AI-generated label on it. In this case, this message came directly from the LLM, so the label is already on there to let users know that AI-generated content may be incorrect. But if you wanted to do that on an activity, it's real easy. You can just add this additional type on the activity, and then you'll get that label for free.
And so the note there is the contents in your card, that just came from your database. We didn't want to tell users this may be incorrect. We know that data is correct.
Exactly.
Yep.
Let's see, the other thing was the citations. So the citations are these inline citations here. In this case, because I connected Azure AI Search with OpenAI Studio, I got these citations for free using the library. So when that RAG happens, the messages come back from Azure OpenAI, and the library will already parse those and give you this experience for free. And so you can get these features with citations based on whatever connection you have there as a data source. We'll hide that. Pierce is messaging me. All right, so even though I'm D&D, I'm not sure about that. So then the other thing was, how do you add citations? Oh, I put an example of how if you want to add citations yourself. So in this case, in the library, you can also override any message that comes in. And let me scroll up just a little bit. There's a lot of code here, but that's the arrow. Okay, here. So I can override anytime there's a say command. So if you think back to the plan and the action planner, there's that JSON object like do or say. Whenever there's a say, you can override that here. And in this case, I've just re-implemented the same logic as the library. So it's open source, so I just copied the code and put it in here as an example. You can see how citations are added. So it's just customizing the object based on the response. There's a citations object inside the response from Azure OpenAI, and I'm just looping through that and then adding the necessary things on the activity. In this case, it's specifying the type, the citation title, and then adding a snippet based on whatever the content was inside that citation. And I think that's everything that we talked about and I added. So those things are pretty simple to add.
Yeah. And there's just a whole fire hose of information for you, from foundational models to the AI library to all our new UX. I just tried to oversimplify this and just have one handy checklist for what makes a Copilot feel, look, and behave truly like a Copilot. You're using a conversational bot. You're not using a command-driven bot. You're leveraging an LLM to manage those conversations. I didn't mention it here, but you really should consider using single sign-on. Don't make authentication a huge burden. And this is something we've improved quite a bit over the last few years. All the UX we just walked through. But I did want to kind of touch a little bit on this very last row here. Everything you can find here is in the Teams Toolkit. But I want to briefly talk about that last row, which is Copilot handoffs. So if you've attended other sessions and you've become familiar with Copilot extensions, like plugins, handoffs are the way to connect a plugin to your custom Copilot. It's the piece that brings everything M365 offers together. So let's re-examine this slide you saw earlier. So far, we've been talking entirely about the right-hand side of it. But as you're likely aware, there's an array of great options for extending Copilot with plugins, graph connectors, and so on. Now I want to show you how investing in each phase of this diagram is probably most beneficial for your users. Today, extensions, well, they extend Copilot. And although these are extremely powerful tools, not all tasks are best suited for a pure extension interface. So for example, let's say you wanted to find a data dashboard that somebody talked about in a recent meeting. The extension can really help you out. But then if you want to go into that dashboard and make detailed changes, chances are you'll want more than a purely conversational interface facilitated through Microsoft's Copilot. So, at least in the foreseeable future, there's always this need for users to flow inside of Copilot, outside of Copilot, into group chats, in meetings, and so on. They don't spend all their time in Copilot. And extensions let you meet them where they are. Basically, an extension is a handoff to pick up the conversation from where they left it, from Copilot to wherever they need to go next, without a cold start, without a brand new interaction. So let's take a look at what this looks like. In the Copilot extension UX, you can respond to Copilot queries with your app's data, structured and adaptive card. This is, if you've been made aware, this is basically the response of a plugin. But now, this plugin can include a handoff link, which, when needed, can route the user to your custom Copilot with the context needed to pick up the conversation where they left it. So let's say the user starts in Copilot. An apps plugin here is invoked. And it returns an adaptive card with an action button that deep links the user to the corresponding custom Copilot in Teams. So this deep link will have context from Copilot's conversation, which enables us to prevent this cold start situation. So in this case, the extension returned the right laptop order that needs updating, but the update's complex enough that maybe the user finds it tricky to handle it entirely in Copilot. So with handoffs, the user picks up the conversation in the next experience, designed to handle that complexity inside your custom Copilot with all the complete control that John just went through. And you can see here the user was breadcrumbed to Katoso from Microsoft's Copilot, and they know where they came from. At the top, you can see they're continuing the conversation from Copilot, and they take the next steps to finish their workflow. So again, a ton of information there. And with the power of the full M365 app model, I just wanted to briefly look at how partners are already building their own custom Copilots. And you'll see how AI solutions are quickly moving beyond purely chat interfaces and already becoming multimodal across images, audio, video, and more. So I want to start with 𝗦𝗲𝗀. So this is an AI engine for data structuring, analysis, and insights. So they built both a Copilot extension and their own custom Copilot. And they connect the two with handoffs, like I just talked about. So let's take a look. We will see someone starting out here in Microsoft's Copilot. They're asking for media coverage insights, and all those insights are grounded in 𝗦𝗲𝗀's wealth of data. And they're exposed to the user, in this case, over 𝗦𝗲𝗀's plugin. After a couple of turns, they assemble all the data they need, and from there, they want to extend the depth of their workflow using the 𝗦𝗲𝗀 Copilot. And as you see right here, they can do this with a handoff. Now, they're picking up the conversation right where they left it. Here, in this case, they might choose to set up an alert that shares the insights that they've gathered so far in their prior conversation with Copilot, and share that thing to, say, a channel that needs it. Again, from Copilot to a single player experience to a multiplayer experience in a group. And from there, the group continues the flow as needed. Next up, let's take a look at how 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀 built Nexus for Teams. So this is an open digital reality platform for manufacturers, and it's powered by Fluid. This Copilot takes advantage of the whole Teams model, beyond chat, using live meetings with rich interactive stages. So here, we're going to see a meeting where a group of engineers are having a discussion on a CAD design of a car's side panel. So as you see, all of them can leverage the Nexus Copilot to ask it to fetch the most relevant model. Then they start working on the model right there in the meeting together. They ask the Copilot to isolate parts of the model, and Nexus updates the UI live in the meeting stage. This is using the full app model that Teams offers. From here, others can collaborate and ask further questions. So you'll see shortly, maybe they'll ask it to add distortion. And even in the model to annotate hotspots with comments that are live inside the 3D canvas. So all of this is driven by the custom Copilot and the code that you just saw earlier. And finally, because it's a Copilot, it can not only manipulate something being shared to the stage, but it's answering detailed questions directly in line. It's truly an AI helper and an assistant in the group chat. And finally, you see it leveraging, again, adaptive cards to take further action on the workflow. All of it in one app model. Now, let's look at ArcGIS. So this is a leading mapping and spatial analytics platform, They also built their Copilot to take advantage of all of our Teams UX canvases, as well as Copilot handoffs, this time for collaboration around geographic information. So here the user again starts in Microsoft's Copilot. Here they're going to ask it a question that invokes the ArcGIS plugin, the Copilot extension. And Copilot answers with rich citations represented by ArcGIS's adaptive cards. But importantly, from here, the user can extend their workflow directly into the ArcGIS custom Copilot. That's what you're seeing right now. And notice that they just picked up the conversation from where they left it in Copilot, and when they're ready, they found the right map and popped it onto an interactive stage. The custom Copilot followed them there. This is, again, following the user wherever they're working. At that point, they found new layers relevant to their work, and they added them to the map that they were focused on. Zooming to the area of interest, you'll see that in a second. But it's important to note that all of this was driven through natural language with their Copilot. There's no advanced understanding needed by the users of how to manipulate ArcGIS's UX directly. The user's just using natural language and making things happen on the stage. Finally, once the user is in the place they need to be, if they do want to interact with ArcGIS's UX directly, they can. You'll see them in a second flipping through some results right there in the UX stage, and this gets them where they want to go, and they finish their work. From Microsoft Copilot to the plugin, to the custom Copilot, to the stage, to the app's UX, all just in one workflow without breaking context. And finally, I'm very excited to say that coming soon to Teams is the Microsoft Designer Copilot. So with this tool, teams can bring their best ideas to life with stunning designs driven by the Designer Copilot. So let's take a look. This is a group that's kicking off a new project to redesign their office space. Instead of assembling all the project assets elsewhere and then copying and pasting them into Teams and sharing to various channels and chats, they just do their work in place, driven by the Designer Copilot that you see here. Their groups are already collaborating in this spot. Designers, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's just part of the conversation. And the design is iterated on across a couple of turns with different people pitching in their own voices and perspectives in place. And finally, if you found one you like, you copy it, download it, take it for further editing, whatever you want to do. But again, the important note is we didn't have to end the meeting, go ask somebody to follow up and come up with designs and have another meeting and share it there. They're just working in line. And that's genuinely the power of these custom Copilots. So that was a ton of information. We're coming in right at time. This is good stuff. Nice. To quickly recap, we broke apart each component of the Copilot tech stack, from the foundational models to the Teams AI library to this huge array of new UX features now coming to you on Teams. And all that together, if you hear about a custom Copilot, this is our definition of a genuine custom Copilot. It's a best-in-class solution for building and deploying inside of Teams and across M365. And John just showed you how to do that right in front of you. If you want to get started, once again, it's all live. Do it today. You can try Teams Toolkit at the link here. The AI library, again, you'll see samples and templates and everything to get you started right from this simple link. And for more, I also want to pause on this slide to let you take more pictures and visit these resources. We talked about adaptive cards, talked about our new UX kit, we talked about the AI library. Go right to the GitHub repo. It's all open source. But in particular, I want to note that we have 3 hands-on labs where you can do your best John Miller impression. You can build your own Copilot from scratch. I think they're filling up really quick, but I don't know. You can race over there and see if you can find a workstation. There's one in an hour and a half from now and 2 tomorrow. So check it out if you want. Literally, the flow of this is everything you just learned. You can sit at a machine and try it out yourself. I hope the session inspired you to go make some custom Copilots. Please use the QR code if you want additional information. And once again, I'm 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗻 on behalf of John. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the build.